Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to this Aruba and Westcoast webinar on User Experience Insight. So the agenda this morning is give you a brief introduction to Uxi. We've made some recent updates to the functionality, so I'll cover those as well. I'll do a demo so you can see Uxi in action if you haven't seen it before, cover how it's licensed, why people need it, and which of your customers to talk to about it. Also cover how best to get access to Uxi demos and do POCs with customers, and also a sneak peek at what we're doing going forward with Zebra, one of our major partners. So as always helps me to understand the audience. So if you could participate in this poll, that would be really helpful. Nothing too challenging here, but it just helps me understand the audience that we have this morning. So if people could just respond to the poll, that would be great. Don't be shy, no one's answering the questions yet. They're not that difficult. Right, well done. Okay, brilliant. 2 out of 9 so far. Few more. If you could just answer these questions, it really helps me understand the audience that we're this morning, and then I can tailor the presentation and session to it. Give it 1 more minute for people to answer. So we got 5 out of 9, 66% of you have answered. Right, so okay, we got 7 out of 10, 7 out of 9, which is pretty good. Okay, so we'll end the polling there. So just so that you can see, it looks like we got a mix of technical and sales. Looks like people are predominantly new to Uxi and haven't been pushing it particularly hard. So let's go over what Uxi is all about, and then we can hopefully we can change that and you can start introducing it to all the people that you're talking to. Okay, so Wi-Fi and the network is really critical to everything that we're doing these days, whether you're working in a smart office, in retail, education, or manufacturing. And as soon as there's an issue with either the Wi-Fi or the network, the first thing that gets blamed. So as soon as there's an issue where users can't actually access the systems and applications that they want to, the first thing that gets blamed is there's a problem with the Wi-Fi, there's a problem with the network. Whether you're over working from home, you've been that home service provider while everyone's been working from home, or whether you're providing a network service to customers or employees within your organization, the first thing that gets blamed is the network. And how do you understand really quickly whether the issue is with the network or actually with the business critical applications that people are trying to use? So how do you identify the source of the issue? And if the issue isn't with the network, how do you accelerate your mean time to innocent? Find out whether the network issue is with the network and the Wi-Fi or is actually elsewhere, and then get the appropriate people involved in it. And that's what Uxi is all about. So if you look at how we do this traditionally, you have sort of vendor specific applications, but like, we've got Airwave and Central and IMC, and there's vendor neutral applications like SolarWinds, for example, and HP OpenView. But what they're all doing is that they tend to be looking at the telemetry that's coming from the network to try and understand how the network's performing it, and if the users of the network, the clients connected to that network, have any issues. But it's giving you very much the network's perspective, and it often is very vendor specific. And in some ways, it's a bit like asking kids to mark their own homework. Whereas what we've got with Uxi and User Experience Insight is we're really monitoring the end user, the client experience of the network, because we're pretending to be a client, synthetically testing and monitoring the network connectivity 24/7. And as you'll see from the demo, we're not just testing the basic network services of network connectivity, but we can test connectivity to key business critical applications that you or your users have decided to monitor. And it's totally independent of the underlying network infrastructure. So you can drop Aruba's Uxi solution into any vendor's network. So it makes it a really good sort of Trojan horse door opener when you're talking to accounts that don't have anything Aruba today. The solution comes in two parts. You've got the sensors themselves. The one that looks like a bit like an access point, this was the original sensor, and we've now released the second generation. The G series sensors are the long sleek one. To give you an idea of scale, these are about 27 centimeters long, so about the length of a ruler, just shy of that. So you've got the sensors that are distributed around the organization and synthetically test the network 24/7. And then in the cloud, we have the dashboard. The sensors sending the data to the dashboards, and that's what you interact with to understand the user experience on the customer's networks. So how does the solution work? So the sensors are basically little Linux boxes that connect to the network as a client would and test it 24/7. Some of the sensors, as you'll see, we've got two models of sensors. One includes cellular, and the advantage of the cellular isn't the fact that we're testing the cellular network, it's just the fact that we've got pure out-of-band management to the sensors. So you could do zero-touch provisioning with the sensors, but also there's an added benefit, which is something called last gasp power. So these sensors include a small battery. And that means that if they lose power, they'll stay alive long enough to phone home to the dashboard and tell the dashboard that the sensor's lost power. Now, this means that if you're using these sensors monitoring networks on remote sites, then if one of those sites loses power, if you're looking at a normal knock, basically you'd see that site go red. Could be the router that's gone down, could be the internet connection that's gone down, or it could be that that site's lost power. With last gasp power and these sensors, you'll know that site's lost power. And that's sort of one of the added benefits of the solution, but it's not what it was really aimed at, but it's a nice added benefit. It's last gasp power with the cellular ones. So once the sensor's connected to the network, you can provision it via the out-of-band management with the cellular connectivity. It connects to, you can connect it to a PoE port and it will be powered by a PoE, or if you haven't got a PoE port, you can power it with a power brick. It'll test the up to 3 or 4 Wi-Fi SSIDs. It tests those in a round-robin basis. You can also test the Ethernet connectivity. So the way we recommend it is connect it to a PoE port, test Ethernet, the wired connectivity, as well as the wireless connectivity. And as you'll see from the demo, that has advantages as well, because if it sees an issue, it goes into what we call triage mode to try and identify the cause of the problem, just like you would or a technician would that's trying to identify the cause of the problem. And it runs those tests on both the wired and the wireless network in order to identify whether it's a general network issue or it's just impacting the Wi-Fi or the wired network. So as I say, we can test up to 4 different SSIDs. It does all the association, the authentication, DHCP, DNS, etc. So testing those network services that are critical in order to gain network access. We can monitor the, we can also log in and test captive portals as well. So if the access to that particular network is via a captive portal, that can be recorded, and we can test connectivity via that captive portal and the response time of that as well. And then, as I mentioned, we're not just testing basic connectivity, we're testing connectivity to business critical applications that you and your users have defined. So we can test connectivity to any server, whether that be internally hosted or externally hosted. And we can do the standard sort of HTTP, HTTPS sort of connectivity tests. For things like Dropbox, we can actually upload and download files. YouTube, we can download, stream videos. And a recent enhancement that really differentiates this solution is the fact we can do what we call web app testing, and I'll show you this in the demo. But basically what you can do is, for any web fronted application, you can record the user's flow through that application, save that as a test, and then run that test 24/7. So what you're doing there is testing true end user experience. So there's key business critical applications, you can record those common workflows, save that as a test. So you're not just testing connectivity to that server, you're actually testing whether those workflows complete and whether they complete in an acceptable time or not. So true end user experience testing with Uxi. The dashboard's really intuitive. It's all traffic light, colors and smiley faces, etc. But behind this, when we go into the demo, you'll see that there's a huge amount of detail as well. So it's liked at lots of different levels of the organization. The techies like it because, as you'll see from the demo, it gives you very granular information. You can see exactly what the tests are we're running. And at a more executive level, it's really simple to understand. So the CIO is being asked, prove to me that you're delivering a good experience to all our employees. They can very easily look at this dashboard and show people that that is the case. In fact, we have one customer that is distributed these around all their remote offices, and what they're doing is they're actually displaying the dashboard in the coffee area so that employees can see what the status of the network. If there are issues, they'll know people are on the case. So there'll be one view in the network operations center, and then each site just has its own view within the coffee area. So a really nice way of showing that the user experience is being monitored and whether there are issues, and if there are, people have confidence that they're being addressed. Our customers love it. We get great feedback. We often do trials or POCs with customers. We were doing a trial with a large retail organization, and they had a problem with their handheld sensors or scanners, and people were running around trying to understand what the issue was. When someone had a look at the Uxi dashboard, they were able to see that there was an issue with DNS. Once that was resolved, all the scanners came back online, and we now have Uxi sensors in every store of theirs in the country. So really compelling solution, and as I say, great feedback from our customers. So this is what the sensors look like when they're deployed. You don't put them on the ceiling because that's not where the users of the network are. They're mounted sort of at waist, shoulder height around the organization, sort of desk height, because that's the height that the clients are that are using the network. So we're testing it at that level. But as you can see, they sort of fit in nicely within the environment. We have two form factors or versions of the sensor, one with cellular and one without. Now, the one with cellular, as I say, has the advantage that it allows you to do zero-touch provisioning via the cellular network, and it also has the last gasp power. But as you'll see, it has, it requires an extra subscription and is slightly more expensive. So what I'd always recommend is on each site you delete at least one cellular sensor. But then if you're trying to sort of improve densify coverage, then the G5E is perfectly adequate. So this does uses Wi-Fi and Ethernet connectivity only. So these sensors, when they're talking to the dashboard, they'll initially try to talk to the dashboard via Ethernet, fall back to the wireless. If it can't do all the wireless, if it's got cellular, it'll talk cellular. Okay. The other thing is just to understand is the cellular one comes with a power brick. The Ethernet only one doesn't. We assume you're powering it via PoE, but if you need a power brick, they're orderable separately. For the non-cellular ones, we've got a mobile app for the provisioning of the sensors. So you need to do a little bit of configuration to allow the sensors to connect to the network. Once they're on the network and they can talk to the dashboard, you can do everything else provisioned through that. And basically the way it works is when the sensors boot up, if they can't talk to the dashboard, they enable Bluetooth, and then you can connect to them via the Bluetooth app on your mobile phone, and then do that initial provisioning. Once they can talk to the dashboard, that's then disabled, and then you do the rest of the configuration via the dashboard. So we've been adding functionality incrementally to UXI. So web app testing is a very big element that we've introduced, which I'll show you in the demo. Another one is, and it's really important, is the fact that we now have integration between Uxi and Aruba Central. So if you enable this, and I'll show you in the demo where this is enabled, if you enable this in the Uxi dashboard, basically Central will then be able to discover these sensors and identify which site those sensors are on, and will automatically in the Central dashboard network health view show you the status of the sensors on that site. So not only showing you the status that we're getting from monitoring our network infrastructure, but you've also got that status there from the user experience piece, and you can then click on that and it jumps through to the Uxi dashboard. We've now got single sign-on. This is something that was in beta for some time, but now it's generally available. So single sign-on, so if you've got organizations that need that, we now support that up to 100 users. And a really interesting one that we've just introduced is we're extending the AI ops that we've got with Central into Uxi. And what we're doing is we've created something called incident detection. So basically the way, Uxi monitors and identifies issues in two ways. One is the fact, if you've got a threshold violation, so as you'll see from the demo, you can set thresholds on things we're monitoring. If those thresholds are exceeded, it will create an issue, whether a major or a minor issue. And also you've got test failures as well. So if a test actually fails, then you'll also have an issue raised. And traditionally in the dashboard, those issues trigger, those things will trigger issues that are either minor or major. So they show up as yellow frown or a red unhappy face. But what you can sometimes find is if you've got a lot of sensors, that there's a bit of background noise of what we call normal issues. So things that just happen on the network, maybe on your guest network, due to whoever's providing the guest network services, DNS is a bit slow. So you're always seeing those issues, but it's sort of like a normal issue. So what we've now got is incident detection, and this is using AI and machine learning to basically learn over a period of time what are what we call normal issues, things that are just occur in the day-to-day on the customer's network, and then separate those from what we define as incidents. So things that are unusual, things that are something that actually does need attention because it's not considered normal. So when you're looking at a dashboard where you've enabled incident detection, those sort of background noise issues and now they're still shown. They're shown as blue, so you can see them, you can still act on them, etc. if you want to, but they're not dominating the dashboard. And then incidents that we've detected, i.e. things that actually do need attention because they're abnormal, are shown as red and are created as incidents. Now this does require a certain scale of deployment in order for it to work, so you do need a minimum of a 20 sensor deployment to enable this. But this is really new, and this is, our larger customers are really gaining from the benefit of this. And we've worked with some of our large customers to trial this and demonstrate the fact this is really adding value, isolating the noise and highlighting those incidents. So this is what the dashboard looks like with incident detection. Basically, the sort of background issues are highlighted in blue, and you can still drill in and see those issues, and then the incidents are created as red, as would be traditionally done. So if you're looking at incident, drilling in more detail, we're differentiating between issues and incidents. And then if you do, you've got your incident log, so you can see very easily what incidents have happened. You can drill into them, and as I'll show you in the demo, just like with you do normally, you if it sees an incident, will go into triage mode, try and identify the cause of that, etc. So there are a number of key enhancements that we've delivered recently. So enough of slides. Let's go to a demo. Jack, Stelios, any questions that need answering before we jump to the demo?
No, nothing yet.
Okay, great. We'll just jump to the demo then. Okay, so this is the Uxi dashboard. This is an unhappy dashboard, but it really allows me to show how rich the information is, even at this top level. So the way the dashboard's set up is these are groups of sensors that we're monitoring down the left-hand side here under Experience, and these are the network services. So these are monitored by default. And then you can group applications together, whether they're sort of internally hosted or externally hosted. And here you can see in this group of sensors, the issues relate to both Wi-Fi and Ethernet based on these little symbols. You can see the issues here are purely Wi-Fi related. And here you can see the issues due to the fact we've lost power. So again, you can see here that this iPerf test is occurring on both wired and wireless, whereas the file server is purely a wireless issue. So even at the top level here, you've got a lot of really useful information. You can look at the dashboard in a number of ways. You can see where the sensors are located geographically. So here we can see the fact that where the sensors are, and their status. You can drill down, and actually drill down and see where those sensors are. And if you want to, you can sort of overlay apps on them, so you can see exactly where those sensors are. It uses the Google geolocate APIs in order to automatically locate the sensors. Alternatively, you can sort of have more of a sort of dashboard type view. The one we tend to use most is the smiley face one. So let me switch account. I'm going to go to my demo setup now. So I've got some Uxi sensors where I'm monitoring my home networks. So setting up Uxi is really straightforward. Basically, you set up the networks that you want to test. So if we want to add a network, you can basically select from the SSIDs that are visible to your sensors. You can then set up authentication onto that network via any of the standard means, whether that be sort of certificate-based, password-based, etc. You can band lock or auto-select, as you'll see from the demo. I've actually running tests against the same SSID, but running two different, created as two different networks, one locked to the 2.4 and one locked to the 5, or alternatively, you can just auto-select. You can do with proxies, etc. Everything you need to configure and connect a client to the network can be configured on the sensors. And you can do this for both wireless and wired connections as well. So if you want to add a wired connection, you can do that. And again, it's got all those standard ways of connect, everything you need to connect, and here you can actually specify the VLAN that you want to use to connect to the network. So you create the networks that you want to test. You then define the testing that you want to do. So as I mentioned in the introduction, you can basically, there's a whole load of predefined tests. Some of these are testing basic connectivity on port 80 or 443. But we've got other tests like Dropbox, for example, where you can actually specify an account to use to do those tests. So here it's using my Dropbox account, and every 4 hours it's uploading and downloading a file in order to test Dropbox. Similarly with YouTube, you can also stream a video. Netflix might not look like a business critical application, but what we're really doing there is we're using fast.com to test the download throughput, just like you would with speedtest.net. Okay, so that's what that's used for. There's a whole load of standard tests that are defined. So if we add test, you've got predefined external tests. So there's a whole series of standard tests that are defined, or alternatively, you can define your own custom tests. And that could be as simple as a ping. We can talk to iPerf servers. We can calculate the MOS scores connected to server, so based on latency, jitter, packet loss, etc. We can test web app server, so test connectivity to that server. So that's what we're doing on test ping on 480 and 443. Or the one that really adds a huge amount of value is where we're using web app testing. So this is where we use this plugin called Selenium, which is an open source plugin to Chrome, to record the interaction between any web-fronted application, save that as a test and run that within the dashboard. And that's really simple to do. So here is Selenium, and this is a test that I've created already. So this is a test that's running against the BBC website. So basically it's now running through this test. I'm not actually clicking anything on the mouse here. You can see my hands, but it's now automatically navigating around the BBC dashboard based on the flow that I recorded. So this test is now recorded. I can save that test as a side file, and then load that into the Uxi dashboard and have the sensors running that. So the sensors are really testing true user experience. So if we go and have a look here, you can create a web app test, and then if we have a look at this, it's running that particular side file every 10 minutes against the dashboard. Another one I just wanted to point out here was Skype for Business, which also doubles up for testing Teams. And here what we're doing is we're calculating the MOS score against the Teams Skype server. So you can see if there's issues that are going to impact the quality of voice or video conferencing. So as I say, you can define these tests and you group them together based on sort of whether they're hosted internally or externally. And then anything we're testing, we can set a threshold on. So you can have a warning and an error threshold. These are all configurable by you, by the users. And then you can test network services like DHCP or etc. You can set the thresholds up on things like latency, packet loss, MOS, etc. And for the web app testing, not only are you notified if that test is unable to complete, but you can be alerted if the amount of time it takes to complete is outside a tolerance that you've defined. So over a period of time when it's running that test, it will sort of baseline the fact it takes 2 minutes to run that particular workflow, and if it goes outside that tolerance, it'll warn you with the threshold. And then you can be notified about these in a number of ways. So obviously you've got the status changing in the dashboard, but you can also subscribe to alerts. And these alerts can be email based. And you can choose to have them inside working hours or outside working hours. Under here, we can also subscribe to a weekly report that gets generated showing you how the user experience is on the network this week relative to the previous week, etc. If you want to integrate with other systems, we've got integration with Slack and ServiceNow. So those alerts, rather than being emailed to you, will actually open a trouble ticket in ServiceNow or create a notification in Slack. This is also where you integrate with Aruba Central. So you enable the integration here, just follow the guidance in the help, and it will set up that integration, sync it, and then the sensors will become visible within Central. And this is also where you configure the single sign-on.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, just one question while you're on this subject. Can you integrate Aruba Central on-prem in the same way as you can Central in the cloud with Uxi?
No, you can't. No, this is only available with the cloud version today.
So, yes, there's one question from Craig. So, Craig, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
That's Central only.
Yeah, Central cloud hosted Central only. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
This is where you enable the AI operations piece. I don't have 20 sensors, so I haven't been able to enable it, but this is where it's enabled. And then you can create users, etc., and give them different access rights. One thing to notice that's really powerful, and I'll talk about a bit more detail, is the fact that you can create groups within Uxi. So if you're a partner that wants to use Uxi to deliver a user experience service to your customers, you can do that. So you can have a Uxi dashboard, create your customers different groups, give them read-only access to that group. When they log into the dashboard, they'll just see their view of the world, of their sensors in their group. When you log in as the administrator, you'd see all the customers. So you can use it for delivering a service in that way, in a sort of multi-tenant model. So jumping back to setting up, so we've created our wireless networks, we set up our tests, we set up our thresholds. Now what we do is we associate the tests with the sensors. So basically here you can see my house sensor, which group it's a member of, and I'm then testing a number of networks. So it's testing, in this case, the same SSID twice, one slot to the 2.4, one slot to the 5. And this test here is actually running against my BT Home Hub wireless. And then when we go back to the dashboard, we can then see the sensors within the group that we're monitoring. So if we look at the house sensor here, we can see the status here. These are the resolved issues that have occurred over the last 24 hours. When you hover over one of these, you see where it happened on the timeline above. On the right-hand side here, we can see the Wi-Fi environment that we're monitoring from those sensors. So you can see association time, what channel it's on, etc. You see the network service performance, and then you can see latency and performance on the internal and external applications that we're monitoring. So here you can see the MOS score, throughput down, for example. If we expand this, what we'll see is we'll see the throughput based on Dropbox, Netflix, and YouTube. But let me go, you can go back in time for up to 30 days. So if we go look at 30 days data, it makes it a bit more interesting. So if we now have a look at that throughput down, for example, here we can see over that time period, you can see here, this is the performance I'm getting out of Dropbox, this is the performance from YouTube, and this is basically the performance I'm getting down from my internet service provider. Okay. This would be the MOS for the Skype for Business that I'm monitoring. So I'm only monitoring one, so you'll see the MOS for that. And what you've got down here is the visibility of all the SSIDs that are visible to this particular sensor. And then you'll see which ones are being monitored and which ones are due to be monitored next. Now, when we see an issue, the sensor and dashboard go into what we call triage mode. So here that we were testing an internal service and it became unavailable. We can, so if we have a look, this happened at the end of April. We were testing connectivity to my Airwave server. And for a couple of minutes, we were unable to actually connect. So what it did was, just like you would if you were trying to identify the cause of the issue, it goes into triage mode. It does a series of tests to try and understand the cause of that issue. So it's saying, yeah, I was able to do an association. DHCP works, the gateway was reachable, DNS seems to be working. I seem to be able to get through and connect to external hosts. but I'm not getting a response from ping from this particular server, and my HTTPS connectivity is not working. And for all of these tests, you can expand them, and you can actually see the commands, the curl commands that are running on those Linux sensors in order to run this test. So for the techies, you've got all the details here to understand what is happening and what tests we're running. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, we're not just doing this against the Wi-Fi, we do this against the Ethernet. So although the issue may have just been impacting wireless, we're testing to see is the same issue on the wired connectivity as well. And you can see down here, ping is actually blocked on this server, but you can see here that it's responding to HTTPS pings. So this issue purely affects the Wi-Fi network. Now, what the sensors are also doing is they're saving a filtered view of the packet capture that's running on these sensors. There's a 50 megabyte packet capture buffer on these sensors that's running all the time, keeping track of the tests that have run. And when you do one of these, when it goes into triage modes, it saves a filtered copy of that, just showing you the tests that have been run. So even though this happened, say at a remote site at the end of April, I can actually not only do I not need to go to that site to troubleshoot this issue, but I can download the packet capture file, PCAP file, load it into Wireshark, and I've got all the data that I needed as though I was there on the day when this particular incident happened. So really, really powerful remote troubleshooting. And as you can see, I've got here, I'm monitoring the different networks. So this is my 5 gigahertz network. This is my BT network, and this is the Ethernet connectivity. Okay. Right. So just jumping back to the slides. So as I mentioned, you can get email notifications. So this is what they look like. You get a notification, you open the email, gives you more details, and then you can click through a link, go to the dashboard, highlighting that particular issue. And again, I mentioned you can generate a weekly, subscribe to a weekly report that shows the user experience this week relative to the previous week. From a licensing perspective, and the cost model, etc. Basically, as I mentioned in the introduction, you've got the two sensors. You've got the G series and the E series. So the actually they're both G series, but you've got the cellular version and you've got the non-cellular version. And the cellular one, as you can see, lists at a slightly higher price than the non-cellular one. So, but as I say, I'd always recommend having a cellular one, especially on remote sites, and they have the advantage of zero-touch provisioning, always being able to talk to them out of band over cellular, and then use the Ethernet Wi-Fi only ones to increase density of coverage. You've then got two subscriptions: the cloud subscription, which gives you access to the monitoring dashboard that's available on a 1, 3, and 5-year basis, and a cellular subscription, which is needed with the cellular ones. And as I mentioned, the power brick comes with the cellular one. If you need it for the non-cellular, it's orderable. So when you've got the G5E, so the one without cellular, the Ethernet and wired only one, you just need the cloud subscription. If you've got the cellular one, the G5C, then you need the cloud subscription and the cellular subscription. And if you have customers that have the original F-series sensor, the one that looks like a bit like an access point, the original license, these subscriptions will work with those as well. And again, they include cellular in there by default, and they need both of these subscriptions to work. If you do not buy the cellular subscription and you've got a cellular sensor, the sensor won't work. You can't just not choose to have the cellular subscription. Now, why do people need UXI? Well, with business today, anywhere you work today, network connectivity is critical to delivering any business outcome. And wireless is becoming more and more critical. And as, traditionally it was wired, now it's becoming wireless. So being able to monitor both of these and identify issues that the users or customers are going to have before they notice it is actually really key. And it also really helps with those sort of anecdotal complaints where you're saying, when someone says, oh, the Wi-Fi last week was rubbish on this particular site, trying to go back and historically identify what was the cause of that issue is really tricky. Whereas with the sensors, if you had a sensor there, not only do you have to physically go to that site to troubleshoot it, but you can go back in time, as you've seen, because we've saved all the tests and the results and the packet capture. So no need to physically travel, but you don't even need to get in your TARDIS to go back in time to try and identify what the cause of the issue is. So really powerful remote troubleshooting. And as you've seen, we're not just testing those basic connectivity services, but actually business critical applications. So applications that are critical to the business, we can test connectivity to them, and we can actually test the workflow, a series of standard workflows through them. So we're testing true end user experience on those remote sites or on wherever those sensors are deployed. In certain verticals, like if you've got cafes, gyms, etc., where they're providing Wi-Fi as a service, guest service, for example, people aren't going to phone up tech support if they've got a problem getting in. They're just going to moan on social media about the fact, don't bother coming to this cafe or this gym, the Wi-Fi is rubbish. And once you've got that, once that reputational damage is done, it's really difficult to repair it. So having Uxi sensors there gives you or the customer the opportunity to understand and identify these issues before it's impacting their customers. Again, if an issue occurs during the night, you'd only find out about it in the morning normally when people start phoning support, the fact that that particular application is down or the network's really slow. With the sensors, you know about it when it occurs because they're monitoring the network 24/7. If you look at the verticals where Uxi plays, anywhere where the network is business critical, whether that be an enterprise type customer with large offices, a highly distributed campus, for example, like universities where you've got buildings physically separated, halls of residence, etc., where to actually physically go to those across the campus to identify an issue is time consuming. You've always got those remote eyes and ears around the campus. And in retail and hospitality, etc., where you've got large distributed environments, having these sensors remotely gives you it's like having a technician on site, testing and monitoring, troubleshooting the network 24/7. And as I mentioned, the solution is totally independent of the underlying infrastructure. You don't need to be an Aruba customer to use Uxi. And as such, it's a great door opener. It's a great initial conversation. If you're talking to a customer, if you're trying to break into a new account, have the user experience conversation with them, do a demo, do a proof of concept. Uxi can be the first Aruba product that they deploy on their network. And then when you're showing them the issues they've got with their existing network infrastructure, it then opens up other business opportunities. And we've used this very, very successfully as a door opener. And as I say, if you're a partner that's looking at delivering services to your customers, you could use Uxi to deliver a remote user experience monitoring service using the groups. Have a group per customer using read-only access for a customer so they can see the status of their group. So they can have access to the dashboard, etc., but you're delivering that service remotely. So that is another option, and we do have people doing that today. Often get asked, how many sensors do you need? So if you're doing blanket coverage, you've got a customer and they want to really do Uxi full on in order to ensure that all their users, wherever they're located, have good user experience and they're monitoring it, then it's the rule of thumb is sort of one sensor per 8 to 10 APs. But what we tend to find is the fact that customers sort of put their toe in the water with a smaller investment initially. So they might strategically place them, one on each floor in a building, make sure you've got one on each of the remote sites, outside the CEO's office, etc. Important areas like conference rooms. And then as they get value from the sensors and they see them in action, they tend to expand their investment. Sometimes we do get customers say, oh, I'll just buy 2 or 3 and then I'll send them out when someone's complaining about an issue. Where you get the real value out of these is having them permanently located, because when the issue occurs, you've then got all the information about that particular issue. They can be sent out, but you've almost, you're doing the testing after the horse has bolted. If the issue still is persistent, you'll see it, but the real value is having these permanently deployed. As you've seen, or hopefully as you've seen, it's a really compelling demo. I've done demos to customers where they've basically, I've got halfway through it and they've gone, right, I've seen enough. I'm just going to buy half a dozen of these to see what they're like, and then we'll go from there. So demoing is key. And there's a number of ways you can do that. As a partner, you can use the not for resale offer, so you can buy the sensors at 70% off and the subscriptions at 80% off. There's an NFR, so you can create your own demo environment, have them in the office, have them in your lab, and use the dashboard, monitor your own environment, and then use that to demonstrate to customers. It's really simple to demo and really compelling. The other option is the fact that Jack does great UXI demos. He's got his own demo set up, so you can lean on him as well. So reach out to Jack if you've got customer demos that you want to do with it. Say, ideally what happens from a demo is people will say, okay, I'll buy a few and try it myself. But if the other approach is the fact through the loan of some units for a POC, and we can do that and support that. So we have something called Idemo, which as part of that, it allows you to loan 2 sensors and a dashboard that are all set up to work together for a period of up to 4 weeks through the Idemo process to run a POC proof of concept with a customer. And these can be arranged via Westcoast. So contact Stelios and Jack and they can arrange Idemo loans if you've got opportunities where you want to do that. So finally, just a peek at something that's coming that's really exciting. So Aruba have a long-standing partnership with Zebra. A lot of our customers use Zebra handheld devices, etc., to as part of their the way that they're working, whether that be in retail or hospitality, etc. They've got handheld devices, these handheld or healthcare. Zebra is a key partner of ours delivering these mobile devices, and they verify them to work seamlessly with Aruba Wi-Fi, with that close partnership. And what we're working on at the moment, and this isn't available today, but it will be next calendar year, is the fact that we'll be able to have an agent run, a UXI agent running on some of these Zebra mobile devices. So these Zebra mobile devices run a version of Android, and we're developing a client that will run on those mobile handheld devices from Zebra. So not only will you get user experience from the sensors that are in, for example, a retail environment, but you'd actually get UXI information data from these mobile Zebra devices, showing the actual user experience, if there's any connectivity and experience issues that they're occurring. And the advantage of this obviously is the fact that the sensors are static, but these handheld devices are mobile, and it will look at monitoring roaming issues, etc., via this agent. So this is a really exciting direction and development. As I say, under development at the moment, and we're working with some large retail organizations trialing this at the moment, but it's not going to be mainstream until next year. But if retail is an area where you have customers, this is something where what we'll be able to do with UXI in the future. So today, it's the sensors. There's a huge amount of value having those in the retail environment. And then over time, you can add the mobile device agents as well. So as you can see from UXI, when you've got UXI, it's there to help ensure that there's a really positive user experience. That if there is an issue with the network, you're aware of it, or the NOC is aware of it before your customers are complaining about it. And you can identify the cause of that. Is it a network issue? Is it an application issue? And pinpoint the cause and work with the appropriate people to resolve it. So UXI is there to help ensure the best possible user experience. And as I say, it really is a great door opener, a great demo, a great way of excuse to engage and talk with customers. So with that, we've got a few minutes left. Are there any questions, Jack?
No, nothing yet.
Okay, so you've obviously done a great job of answering them as we go along. Feel free to type in the chat if you have any questions. As I say, demoing is key as with all these things. So, get a couple of sensors via the NFR stream, set up your own demo environment. You have the added advantage there of being able to actually monitor the user experience within your office, but then use that as a demo environment to showcase this for customers. And then, or alternatively, as I say, Jack's got a very good setup. He can demo it as well. And then if you're moving on to a proof of concept, Idemo is excellent for that. We've got these pairs of sensors that you can loan for up to 4 weeks, paired up with a dashboard that are all shipped out to you or your customer, that you can then log into and set up and deploy. Those sensors are the cellular sensors, though, you can just ship them to the customer site and remotely configure them to do a POC. Any questions, Jack? If not, we'll wrap up.
No questions. Yes, thank you, Chris.
Okay, well, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. Studios, do you want to say anything to wrap up?
Just to say thanks again, Chris, for today. Thanks everyone for joining. This is a really great product. As Chris has sort of said, you get any opportunities with your customers, let us know. We can arrange a POC, a demo with Jack, and really help to qualify for you. So no, thanks again for everyone joining today. And Chris, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks, everyone. There'll be an email that will come out in the next day or so. I'll put a link to a copy of the slides in that, so you can use that as a starting point for engaging with your customers. Okay, thank you for your time this morning and have a good day.